Joining me right now, the senior economics contributor to FreedomWorks, it's Stephen Moore. And Mr. Moore, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
Hey, good morning. I'm looking forward to coming to Midland tomorrow.
Yeah, it's we've got a lot of listeners down in Midland, and a lot of folks I think who'll be wanting to make the drive down to Midland to hear.
How far are you from there?
Not too far. About not too far at all. Now you're going to be
it's free, folks. So you can't beat that price.
That's right. Well, now you're going to be speaking about U.S. economic growth and the Permian Basin and how all of this really can tie together. Correct?
Yeah, look, I mean, Texas has really led the way out of the terrible recession we had back in 2008 and 9, and Texas and the Permian Basin were major impacts in terms of increasing American output. And my line is we've the capacity now to become not just energy independent for the first time in 50 years, but also the energy dominant country in the world, where we can be the new OPEC and be producing more oil and gas and coal, incidentally, than any other country. And that puts us in a commanding position with respect to our economy, and it also helps with our balance of trade. It increases jobs, and it also reduces the threat of terrorism, because right now, when we import all this oil, we're importing it from a lot of countries that are supporting terrorist networks.
Right. Well, and so what can – obviously this administration is already taking, in my opinion, good steps.
For sure.
Especially compared to the last 8 years, good steps towards that goal. What are some of the big things that they have done, and what more can they do to really not only get the Permian Basin to help out with the economy, but to continue this great growth that we have seen in the U.S. economy?
Well, it's a great question. And by the way, I worked with Donald Trump as his senior economic advisor during the campaign. So I worked with him very closely on energy policy. And we have a great energy policy. It's pro-growth. It's pro-development. It is pro-jobs. It has made a big difference in states like Texas and Oklahoma and West Virginia, North Dakota, the states that have become and Alaska has really benefited from this as well. So what Trump has really done has been an all-of-the-above guy in terms of energy. He's gotten rid of a lot of the regulations that were meant to strangle our fossil fuel industry, especially our coal industry, but also oil and gas. And incidentally, I live in Virginia. We're a coal-producing state. I mean, what you mentioned the previous administration, and you said that Trump has been an improvement. It would be hard not to be an improvement over the last administration. I mean, Obama was so against fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So, we're just at the beginning stages of this incredible shale oil and gas revolution, and it'll make us much less dependent on, countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and Venezuela for our oil, and it'll mean we can get it from Texas and North Dakota and Alaska and places that are producing American oil. And so I'm very high on this. I think it could continue to, with the continued pro-energy development strategy that Trump wants, we can increase our output of oil and gas and coal by $150 billion a year. That's like the equivalent of another percentage point of GDP growth.
What is getting out of the Paris Climate Accords? And I know the U.S. can't be fully out for another couple of years, but we're getting out of it under President Trump. What does that mean for oil and gas, and what does it mean overall for the economy here in the U.S.?
It's a great question as well. I mean, look, the truth is that the Paris Accord was basically put America last, and it was made America pay for. There's a big slush fund that the Paris Accord created that the United States government, that is taxpayers, had to pay for, which was ridiculous. With all these treaties, America always gets taken to the cleaners, and certainly with that one. But the other thing that was so phony about this deal, even if you're someone who's who's an alarmist about global warming, that treaty would have zero impact on global warming, because China, as we're shutting down our coal plants and our energy, China is building 150 coal plants. Did you know that?
Wow.
150 coal plants. They're not going to abide by this deal. China's laughing at us behind our backs. Say, yes, Americans, you shut down your energy, and we'll do the same. And of course, with the Chinese, you have to watch what they do. not listen to what they say. And it's pretty clear they have no intention whatsoever of slowing down their economy by, with these regulations that are imposed on America on energy. So it would have been a very bad deal for America. And by the way, India is also building dozens and dozens of coal plants. So every time we shut down a coal plant in America, these countries like India and China build 10. How does that reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned with China, you have to watch what they do, not what they say. It seems like we've made a lot of agreements in the past with countries where you actually have to watch what they do and not what's written on that agreement, right?
That's exactly right. Of course, we learned that with arms control treaties. We've learned that throughout history with respect to peace treaties with the Germans and Japanese and so on. I mean, they will violate the agreements as soon as it's or even some of these trade treaties where we get taken to the cleaners. Now, I'm a free trade guy, but we got to make sure everybody's playing by the same rules. And we tend to abide by these treaties, and the rest of the world ignores them.
Yeah, absolutely. We were visiting with Stephen Moore of Freedom Works. He'll be down in Midland tomorrow night speaking. It's a free event. Encourage people to go. What is your view long term for this economy? I keep on seeing headlines pop up. From people who they probably, and maybe it's, it's not a bad thing that people assume it's got to slow down or there's going to be a burst or, because things are going well for the U.S. economy right now. And people are, maybe just, naturally worried that you're going to see a slowdown. What do you think? What do you think the future looks like over the next couple of years?
It's a great question. I'm bullish. I'm very bullish. I think that if we get, this pro-American energy policy put in place, which Trump is doing as we speak, and then if you add to that, the other thing I'm going to talk about is the imperative of getting this tax cut passed for American businesses and American families. And if you do the pro-American energy development, the deregulation, and then get this tax cut done, I think we can get to a pace of growth that would be twice as fast as we had under Obama. So instead of, growing at, 2% per year, we can grow 4% per year. And that means, the size of the economy, 20, 25 years doubles. And that will mean all of these problems, whether it's, dealing with poverty or dealing with, the budget deficit and the debt issue, all of those are made so much easier to solve if we have faster debt. So, look, this is a pro-growth, pro-business president. Donald Trump has replaced a president who was anti-business, frankly, and the people he put in these agencies were incredibly left-wing ideologues who hated business. Now we've got people who like business and want business to succeed, and, you can put me in that camp, by the way. I want American businesses and industries to be the number one in the world. I want jobs created here in the United States. I don't want them leaving the U.S. I don't want them leaving Texas or Michigan, Ohio for, Mexico or China or India or the European countries. We have to keep our jobs here, and Trump is very focused on that.
We've seen with the climate change and Paris Climate Accords. I just want to know if you have any predictions on this. And we, of course, talked about energy and fuel, and we've seen where different, I guess mainly it's mid-European cities have done this. No cars in the city for a day. We're not going to do that. What do you think the first U.S. city will do? Like, which city will be the first to say, we're going to go one day, no cars?
Well, I hope they do that. I mean, it'll show to the American people how lunatic some of these leftists are, that they actually believe automobiles are the worst inventions ever. Of course, we are. We could go back to horses and buggies, and by the way, you want to talk about pollution? Can you imagine what a city like Houston smelled like when people were traveling around on horses rather than cars? I mean, there's a lunacy of the left, and you just have to parody them because they're so stupid. And they actually think that the car is a terrible invention and that they hate the combustible engine. But this is, of course, what's made economic progress possible. So anybody listening to this show on the radio and you're driving your car, the left wants you to, be on a bus, or they want you to be on a horse, or yeah. I don't know what they were. They want you to stay home and not go to work. But
maybe it's actually a secret plan to get rid of conservative talk radio. That if we just put everybody on a bus,
exactly,
no one will be listening to the radio.
But, the automobile, when you think about it, over the course of civilization, was maybe one of the top 10 inventions of all time in terms of, reducing poverty, increasing mobility, increasing living standards. It's been, an unbelievable. And by the way, the cars pollute. It's funny when you ask people. I do this with students all the time. How you small college kids. Do you think the air is more polluted or less polluted than 50 years ago? Do you think the water is more polluted or less polluted than 1,500 years ago? And I'd say 90% of these kids think, oh, yeah, 100 years ago the water and the air was much cleaner than today, which, of course, is lunatic. I mean, back 100 years ago, 1 out of every 4 deaths was due to contaminants in the drinking water. And can you imagine what, cities like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and London looked like, 100 years ago versus today? You couldn't even see through, the sun couldn't even penetrate. There was so much smog in the air. So, economic progress leads to better environmental improvement, and as we get as a richer country, we'll continue to have a pristine environment, and the two things go hand in glove. But liberals don't understand that. They're against economic progress, frankly.
Yeah. Stephen Moore, I appreciate your time today. You'll be speaking
come on out, guys. Yeah. I hope to see you there, and all your listeners. We're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow night, and educate people on the way the world really does work, and not the way liberals portray it.
All right, Stephen Moore will be speaking tomorrow night down in Midland, 7 p.m. at the Wagner Noel Performing Arts Center. Stephen, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.